see, we'll start soon. Yeah, I always promise we'll start promptly at 12:15, right? And we'll do so today. Yeah. I think some of you guys encountered an accident. Apparently, the car is still overturned. Still there, yeah. Right. So some people may be late. But anyway, this week we are actually very, very honored to have Rama with us. Right? Rama is an old friend. I knew Rama back in the 90s when he was actually in the industry group in IDA, right? And when I did my startup, he actually helped me quite a bit from the IDA standpoint. And recently, Rama started together with a friend of his, right, CIOAcademy, looking at, I would say standard, I'll let him explain what it's all about, right? But I think it's important for us as tech entrepreneurs to actually understand what resources we have outside of what we do, right? For example, while we are not CIO, as he mentioned, right, we do need to know who are the CIOs. Because as tech entrepreneurs, we may get business from them if they understand where we are coming from, right? Because one of the reasons why we are doing this is because by having informal relationship, right? When there's a presentation, it's not buyers versus seller. It's not investor versus investee, right? There's already some rapport in there, and people understand where you are coming from, right? So I think it's important. So that's why I want to extend this network to as many people as possible. So without further ado, let me invite Rama to share. Thanks, Rama.
Okay, so I was told that there's a certain spot that I have to operate within to keep my image within that camera. Okay, but anyway, very good afternoon to all of you. As Chuck has mentioned, yes, call me Rama. More comfortable with just a four-letter word called R-A-M-A, Rama. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, when Chuck called me and shared with me about doing this session, I was a little hesitant. Reason being, I said, who is it for and what is it about? And he says, it's for technopreneurs. And the reason why I was a little hesitant was that, and as I go along, you'll know why. I'm not a natural entrepreneur. Okay. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay. What I'm doing now happened by accident, not by design. Okay. So if you can say I'm an accidental entrepreneur. Okay. And as I go along, I'll try and put it across to you and explain to you why. Okay. So, but anyway, I'm now the deputy CEO of a startup. I would say still startup because we are about 2 years old, right? We call ourselves the CIOAcademy Asia, and our stakeholders, basically, when we say a community of leaders, primarily CIOs. Okay, CIOs who are the tech buyers. Okay, they are the ones who will determine what to buy, at what price, and what is needed for the organization. Okay, so they actually are a very important aspect of the whole equation where we have the tech suppliers, i.e. probably most of you, right? Whether you're a startup company or you're involved in developing some kind of a tech solution, so you would represent the suppliers. Okay, this community will represent the buyers. Okay, now keep that in your mind when I talk more about CIOAcademy, because for a very long time, when I was with the government for 30 years, I realized that especially in Singapore, there is a gap. There is a big gap, between the suppliers and the buyers. When I was in IDA, I spent most of my time on the supply side. Being part of the national champion for IT, we spend a lot of time developing capabilities, encouraging people to start their own companies, helping companies to innovate, right? And all this was very much on the supply side. Okay? After it's all dressed up, after you have all your products and all your services and all the solutions, what's next? You need to sell it, right? Right? It's no point having a wonderful product, a wonderful service when at the end of the day, nobody comes to buy from you, you know. So it was also my responsibility when I was in IDA to try and bring the buyers, and then you have a marketplace, right? Let me tell you this, it was very challenging, especially when I was in IDA. Very challenging. And I'm not only talking about mainly the private sector. Even talking about, I was in the public sector before, even getting the CIOs from, you know, the GCIO, trying to bring them to, for an opportunity to see what was available in the market was also very challenging. Okay? So now that I'm outside, in the private sector, I'm glad that with my involvement in CIOAcademy, I can spend more of my energy on the buying side, which is exactly what I'm doing, okay? And I'll explain more as we go along, okay? So, by the way, this picture that you see here, okay, has Bill in the picture as well, and myself. If you look carefully, Bill, you was there with the, showing the peace sign, you know. It was taken in Bhutan. Okay, yeah, with a glass of wine, of course. It was taken in Bhutan a couple of months ago. We had a very nice thought leadership conference over 3 days in July, and we managed to get close to about 140 C-level executives, you know, to join us for this event. Okay, it was a thought leadership event. It was very successful, you know. Thanks for the participation of all the people. But I'll explain to you also what happened during the conference. Okay, some interesting things happened during the conference as well. Okay, let me go back to the folks behind CIOAcademy Asia. Okay, my partner Glenn Francis actually was responsible for starting this company. Okay, he had this idea a couple of years ago. Glenn used to be a CIO for more than 20 years with several large organizations, and he was also involved in associations. Some of you may have heard ITMA. ITMA has got probably the largest community of CIOs, and he also started another association called Ideation. Okay, so he's got a lot of experience in running associations, and also he was a CIO. Okay, and I think after working for 20, 30 years, he had this idea that he wanted to start a company to build a stronger relationship with the community of CIOs, and develop activities around them. Okay, and so what happened was, after he started CIOAcademy Asia for a year, at one event, I bumped into him. Okay, and that was the time where I just left the public sector. So think about this, I've been with the public sector for more than 30 years, right? And here I am leaving the public sector, coming out to the private sector. A lot of anxiety, I'm already 58 years old, right? So I was looking for my next career move, at a very late age of 58 and going into the private sector. So I took the safe route, right? So when I left the public sector, I said, look, I'll just operate as a consultant, a solo consultant. By the way, I'll show you this interesting card of mine. And this is the card that I had, with me when I first came out, as a consultant. I had this caricature of myself. I thought it was a good thing to have because I was going to take it light, light-hearted. I wasn't looking for anything, serious. I just wanted to enjoy the ride, take it easy, after being more than 30 years already, as I said. And I had a couple of projects as a consultant. I was fortunate because when I was in IDA, I had a lot of opportunities to work with foreign governments. Okay, so I was doing some consulting work to help them develop their industry development master plan. Hi. And while I was in between projects at an event at ISS, I bumped into Mr. Glenn Francis, you know. And he says, you know, Rama, what are you doing? I said, well, you know, I just left public sector. I'm just doing a couple of projects on my own as a consultant. And he said, hey, you know, I started this organization called CIOAcademy Asia. I'm looking for people to join me. Why don't you hop on? I said, look, you know, I'm not looking for anything serious. You know, I just want to find some things to do to occupy my time. I will do a couple of projects for you, I said, you know, not as a full-time employee, but I'll just do a couple of projects for you. And then if I like it, maybe I'll go, you know, full-time. So that's how it started, right? So going back to what I said earlier, it's purely by accident. It's not as though I was looking out for it, right? And when I started doing some of the work for CIOAcademy Asia, I realized that it was something I could do. It was something I enjoyed doing, right? In the public sector, I was doing this thing called industry development. Industry development means you mingle with the industry, you find out what are the gaps in the market, and then you come up with policies, you come up with programs. Of course, I was fortunate enough to be the one who used to give out grants. So, you know, the community was quite close to me in that sense, you know, subsidies, you know. So I had a lot of deep relationships, you know, with the industry. So happened, this job that I'm doing now also has a lot of dealings with the industry, you know, and a lot of the friends that I've met over the last, say, 15 years, they still remember me, and the good thing is, they're supporting me, you know. So that was a big plus for me, you know, in my current role in the private sector. I've got all these partners and friends who are supporting me, you know. So it makes my job more enjoyable, you know. I'm enjoying this ride, you know, and I'll share with you my reflections so far. It's been about a year since I've been on this job, you know. So now, what is CIOAcademy, right? It's basically a thought leadership company. Okay, so what we do in short is that we put together events, we put together programs, and we bring the community of tech buyers to share their challenges, their pain points about technology. That's it, very simple, right? It's no rocket science, you know, but there is a little difference there because there are many companies out there that organize events, a dime a dozen, right? If you go out, very competitive market in this space, right? How do we differentiate ourselves, right? So Glenn and myself, I think one good thing going for us is, again, which I'll stress later, is all about relationships, right? The community that we have in Singapore, the tech buyers, the CIOs, we have developed relationships with them, you know, so much so that we can pick up a phone, and if you tell me today that you're going to have an event tomorrow and you need 15 CIOs, I'm quite confident within 24 hours I can get them to come for your event. Okay? It's not cold call. That's the difference. I'm not making a cold call. I'm calling people whom we know. You know, people from different organizations, from different industries. You know, so that's really our strength. Okay? Glenn has got lots of traction with the private sector CIOs. Okay? Myself, naturally, coming from the public sector, I've got pretty good links with the public sector. Okay? So the combination works, right? Both Glenn and myself, the chemistry works, the partnership works, and listen, the first year and the second year, our revenues multiplied 10 times. 10 times, okay? And seriously, I couldn't believe it, right? But it has happened, you know. Our problem now is scaling. We don't have that many resources. The company only has about 6-7 people, besides Glenn and myself, another four people in the operation side, you know. But you know, we are walking away from deals, which is not good. because we just don't have enough resources. But so I'll explain to you. We are at that point now where we have to figure out what's next, right? And I'm sure many of you as entrepreneurs, when you start your company, the first 2 years or 3 years, will be a different challenge, getting traction, getting the demand, getting people to understand your products, your services and all that. But once you have grown to a certain stage, the second stage of your challenge would be, how do you scale the company, right? You can continue to cruise, right, and just make sufficient, or do you want to take the next leap where you want a little bit of a hockey stick kind of a elevation to your company, right? I'm sure all of you here, I'm probably preaching to the converted here. I mean, you all should know better than me that that's really the challenge I'm in right now. Okay. Now, more about CIOAcademy Asia, and I just try and put across. I want to put across that we are trying to sell value. Okay, we are not just another event organizer. Okay, there are many, as I said earlier. Okay, how do we articulate that value? How do we make the experience good for people who have come to our event, and then they go back, they say good things about the experience, so much so that other people want to come for our events, so much so that they want to come back for our next event. That's what it's all about, right? Because if you don't create that wow factor, that's it, yeah? Over time, nobody will want to come for your event, okay? And with that, you grow your brand, okay? Right? Yeah. So, what's the value? That value, it so happens, is in sync with what is happening today. People want real life experiences. People want to hear from industry practitioners. Gone are the days where paper qualifications are the most important thing. Okay, so even today when you hear our ministers, when they go up to talk, they talk about lifelong learning, they talk about experiential learning, and it's basically experiences that people gain on the job, right? And that's what we are selling in terms of value. All our practitioners, all the people who get involved in our events, when they give a talk or they present, they are crystallizing their experiences, actual experiences on the job. And they're trying to put that across to the audience to say, this is what I'm going through, these are my pain points, these are my challenges, this is what I did, and I'm sharing it with you because I'm quite sure at some point in time, you will be also going through what I'm going through. And I hope that by sharing with you, you can go back and maybe use some of the techniques or some of the solutions that I've used during my work. That is priceless. Seriously, really, these days, it's priceless. Invaluable. People will pay to listen to practitioners sharing their stories, and that's the value that we are selling. Okay, so our community of leaders, which actually right now spans across, we have gone beyond Singapore, we have gone into Southeast Asia in a big way, right? We started off very much in Singapore, but now we have gone into KL, Malaysia, Penang, Manila, Jakarta. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to Hong Kong. Our database has grown, our community has grown. So we have probably about more than 10,000 in our database of C-level executives and -1. So we try and target our community and keep it at a certain level, because thought leadership is all about sharing your views with your peers, right? So we have to keep it at a certain level, right? And so far we've been quite successful in doing that, So whenever we hold an event, be it by invitation or word of mouth, sometimes word gets around, it must be pegged at a certain level. Okay, only then the conversations become meaningful. Because peers want to hear from their fellow peers about what's happening in their job, what's the problem with certain technologies, how did you overcome this problem? How do you overcome the challenges? And at that level, it's like like-minded people, you know, meeting of the minds. They feel more comfortable, and then they'll take that home as lessons learned, and hopefully they can apply it in the job on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so that's what you see. Those pictures there. We deliberately use those pictures because our sessions are not big sessions. You know, 20, 10, 15. You know, we keep it at a certain level because we feel you want to encourage people to share, and you want to make the discussions more meaningful. It's better if you keep it at a certain level. You know, it shouldn't be too big, right? Just pitch. In fact, if you ask me, 15 to 20 is about the right numbers. Okay, so we can have a round table discussion, or we can have a seminar style, or whatever it is. We keep it small. You know, of course, for certain conferences that we hold, the largest that we've held so far, like the one I showed you, the picture about Bhutan, is about 140, but that's a different scale altogether, and that one involves different kind of planning, which I'll touch on later. Okay? This is what we do, right? So the first pillar is all about thought leadership. I told you events, you know, we build the community, and then we get them together, and then, you know, we discuss certain issues, certain problems with certain technologies, or, you know, what's out there, what is available, you know, what is the trend, you know, what are the insights. Okay, all this is being done during the thought leadership. We also have a pillar called social empowerment. So it's quite interesting. This is our CSR, right? Many of our community folks who have already reached the pinnacle in their careers want to give back. You know, they feel that there's more that they can give and help the society, right? Especially for the underprivileged or those people who do not have access, you know, or the expertise to use certain technologies. So many of our community leaders want to give back. So we have created a pillar to allow them to do that as well, you know, besides just looking at it from a business perspective. Okay? We have what we call leadership challenge. Okay, this is quite interesting. The leadership challenge is that we try and create experiential learning. We take people to places, exotic places, you know. We bring them there for a day or two to discuss certain topics, and then we also want to create the element of fun, you know. And that seems to work, okay. So people who come for some of our activities don't only stay for the 1 day, 2 days conference. They extend their stay 2-3 days after that to explore the new place. Example, I talked about Bhutan, right? We were there, we had a 2-day conference. Quite a number of them stayed on for a 1-week program after the conference. And we organized activities for them to explore the country. You know, meet up with people, understand, you know, how culture, and, you know, in the process, you know, learn certain things that you would not get from the books, you know, but you have to be there, you know. So the whole, it's a package. Okay? The conference is only one part of it, you know. The other part that is also very attractive to many of the participants is exploring new experiences, new countries, new culture. Okay, so we have that element also built into, you know, our thought leadership, right? Especially when we take people out of Singapore. Okay, so in a way, there's this hidden value also that we provide, you know, which is another attractive factor. Okay, and of course, the usual topical seminars, right? I mean, being in the tech industry, every now and again, you know, there will be a new technology, a new trend, a new concept, you know, and every now and again, I think people need to understand what is happening, because there's a lot of noise. Sometimes, you know, in the tech sector, there's so much noise, you know, and there's so much literature, you know, you get bombarded, right? Vendors, okay? In fact, I try not to use the word vendors with my CIO community. I said, they are not your vendors, they are actually your partners, okay? And when I interact with the suppliers, right? I tell them, look, try and understand the psyche of the CIO, the DNA of the CIO. The CIOs, in a way, are always being bombarded on a day-to-day basis by all kinds of folks wanting to sell all kinds of technology to them. Okay? So much so, some of them go into their cave, you know, and leave their -1 staff to deal with it before they get involved. Okay? So there is a certain way of engaging them. You know, it has to be in a very subtle way, not in a very direct way, right? But when you deal with the CIO community long enough, you realize they can be engaged, but they must be engaged in a certain manner. Okay? And some of which comes under some of the events that we put together, like thought leadership now. So what's our business model, right? At the end of the day, so I'm sure that's on your mind, right? So you know, you do all this, so who's paying for it? You know, how do you make your revenues? Okay, at the moment, our business model is strictly on sponsorships. Okay, so sponsors like what we are doing, they think the event is attractive enough, they think that there will be a lot of CIOs involved, they put in a certain sum of money. Okay, we have different sponsorship levels, so at least they can be involved. But when they are involved, we are not selling their product or service. I'll be very frank with you. We don't allow the folks from the tech companies who are involved to talk about their product and service. You want to talk technology, you can come and talk technology, but don't push your product or service. So it's done in a very subtle way. At most, you get your logo there as a sponsor. Everybody knows that you've been involved in sponsoring the event. You know, in fact, some of the CEOs of the tech companies can even be involved in the panel discussions that we have in our events. You know, and they are being subjected to queries and questions about what they are doing and how it will help. You know, at the end of the day, what value are you selling? You know, and not so much just dangling your product and service. Okay, so this is what I mean by engaging the CIOs, right? Not directly in terms of what you have to offer, but rather getting involved in a conversation with them, right? And trying to put across your value proposition in such a way that they will have a better belief in what you're selling. Okay, right? I know it's easily said, no, it's not so easily done, but if you work along these lines, I think you will have a better element of success as compared to just giving them a brochure or, you know, doing a cold call or engaging them directly and just talking about your product. It doesn't work. They'll get turned off, and that's it. You know, they won't even bother to meet up with you to find out more about your product. Okay, so these are how I would say these are manifestations, okay, of opportunities to engage the leadership in technology to try and get them to understand more about what you have. Okay. So we have broadly classified our offerings under what we call the 3 E's, right? Engage, enrich, and empower. Okay. So going back again to the kind of events that we have, we create opportunities to engage, exchange ideas, right? A lot of case studies, yeah. It's important. You know, when you do experiential learning, or you share, you know, by seasoned CIOs, they always like to hear case studies. And case studies, not necessarily only successful ones, even failures. Because from the failures you learn, right? So all this is being shared during our various platforms. Enriching, well, we do have panels of CIOs who have gladly offered their services to be mentors. Okay, so quite a number of them have clocked like 30, 40 years as a CIO, you know, and now some of them are semi-retired. We have a large panel of them, and whenever, you know, maybe like SMEs or organizations who do not have a full-time CIO, we can engage these people as mentors, you know. So we have coined this term, you may have heard of it, I'm not sure, CIO as a service.
seriously, you think about it. Not all organizations can afford to have a full-time CIO, right? So maybe you need the CIO to come in like once or twice in a week or in a month, you know. Of course, you have your IT team, but you may need some sound advice from a CIO. They can offer it as a service. Think about it, it's something novel, but it works, you know, and it comes from experience, you know, people who have earned 3-4 decades, you know, of doing that kind of work, right? So, enriching. And then empowerment, right? So, it's more the CSR part where we empower our CIOs to provide mentorships to youth or to help the youth, you know, help the underprivileged, you know, and provide a service, give back to society. Now, on the right is something that we are very proud of, considering that we are only about 2 years old, you know, we've done quite a number of events, okay. We've got quite a number of advisors on our board, okay, right? People who want to be associated with us, okay. We put them on the advisory panel because every time we do something, we seek their advice. We ask them whether, does this make sense to you? If not, what should we do, okay? So, that's something that I think startups also can think about, you know. It's always good to have a board of advisors, okay. It may not be formal, you know, because, you know, formalizing it is not going to be very easy. You probably want to formalize it later when you start growing to a certain stage where you're more matured. But in the early stages, you can have very informal relationships with advisors that you can pick up the phone or, you know, take them out for a drink or coffee or a beer, and just get the advice from them, you know, about what you're doing and whether it makes sense. Okay, so we have quite a number of advisors, right? And of course, our partners are very important to us, right? At this point in time, the technology partners are actually the ones who can end up being our sponsors, right, for our events. So they are going to help us generate revenue, right? So it's important for us to keep that link and relationship with all these people. Now, this is the part where I'm very proud to say, we've got 130,000 followers, considering that we're only about 2 years old, right? And my partner, Glenn Francis, is a big social media guru. He's big into LinkedIn, he's big into Facebook, you know, he's like, I call him like the poster boy, you know. But the important thing is that we have used it to our advantage, you know. Every time we get involved in certain initiative or activity, we make it a point to take pictures or, you know, to write about it and boom, post it either on Facebook or on LinkedIn, and, you know, and it has a tremendous effect on people, you know. These days, I'll be very frank with you, right? I was from the public sector. I knew zilch about social media. I never used to have an account on Facebook, okay? But of course, after leaving now with CIOAcademy Asia, I'm beginning to understand the power of social media. And it's not an expensive tool. It's almost free. But if you use it correctly, you position it correctly, and of course now I'm beginning to understand there's a science behind it. It's not just a matter of just posting. You know, I'm beginning to learn that there are certain times of the week, certain periods where if you post, you get more people looking at what you've posted, what you have been posting. How do you grow your links with other people, like in LinkedIn? I mean, my partner Glenn has got 20,000, yeah, 20,000 community following him, you know, on LinkedIn, and that's huge, and you know, all over Southeast Asia. So every time you make a posting, somewhere out there is looking at it, and he's learning about your organization, and he's learning about what you're doing, right? It's digital marketing, right? So we are big into social media, and I'm quite sure many of you here who've got your startups or, you know, who are going into entrepreneurship in a big way, right, are also doing that. But my advice for you is that use it to your advantage. Learn as much as you can about how to be more effective on the social media platform, and the benefits will be there. You'll reap the benefits, okay? Like what we are doing right now. Okay, so, you know, these are just illustrations of the Engage, you know, empowerment. These are the various, like for instance, the one, the picture in the center, right? The chairman for CA came to Singapore, and they engaged us. They said, look, he gave a wonderful talk in Davos about the apps economy. I went onto YouTube, I saw the talk, I thought it was a very, very nice talk. And when he came to Singapore, he said he wanted to engage really high-level C executives in Singapore to share, what he spoke about in Davos. And we put together a wonderful round table. We had people like Jacqueline Poh, from GovTech now. She leads GovTech. We had Robert Yap, right? These are all people who are, quite reputable, quite well-known in Singapore, and they were interested to come and listen to him, And we moderated the session. It was a wonderful session, Of course, they had very nice dinner, right? But the conversations that took place was wonderful. I learned a lot. So did my partner Glenn, And everybody had a wonderful conversation, a wonderful dinner. They left, and they were happy about the whole thing, right? And then, of course, when you do something like this and word gets around, it helps to promote your brand. Yeah. Okay. Workshops, training. Okay, so this is where I'm okay for time. Yeah. Okay. So a lot of people are asking us, right? So Rama, well and good, you're doing this pillar, you're doing sponsorships, you're making good revenues. Will it last? Sponsorships will never last forever. Okay, and we know that. So we are fully aware of the fact that it's a good start. It's good for us to build up our brand, generate revenues. Eventually, we need to grow our academy pillar, because that's what we're all about, right? CIOAcademy Asia, right? We cannot be just doing one event after another and organize things and hope for sponsors to come on board. So what we are doing in the next year is that we're going to start growing our academy pillar. What's the academy pillar? Academy pillar is all about extracting content, valuable content that is being generated from all our events, capturing it, publishing it, or capturing it as a curriculum, and then develop, say, workshops, for the academy pillar. Go out there and use that to teach, say, the next generation of CIOs or aspiring leaders, in IT, and hopefully from this curriculum, this content, they can benefit from it. And if it's good enough, people will pay to attend your courses, and then we can say that we can break free from just depending on sponsorships. Okay, so that's where we are heading towards, building up our academy pillar. And for that, we have signed MOUs with business schools like SAC. We're working with SMU, and some of them now are willing to work with us, collaborate with us, because we bring content that is generated from the industry, real life cases, right? Seasoned folks, leaders who want to share their insights. All that can be captured as part of the curriculum. Okay, so I give you an example. We signed an MOU with, I told you, this French school called ESSEC. Now we are doing a couple of workshops with them. They have their normal 3-day, 5-day workshops where they conduct, in different areas. The tail end, the last one day, they'll keep it free to bring CIOAcademy Asia, bring about 4 to 5 CIOs from the industry, put them in a panel so that they can share their war stories with the participants of the workshop. So that sort of is a nice plug-in, where you bring industry relevant stories and case studies, and the matured students in the business schools appreciate that, and you can have an interaction, with our practitioners. Okay, so this is just one of the examples. Okay, as we go along, we will probably be having more of such, engagement. Okay, then I don't want to elaborate too much on all this. You can see, like we mentioned just now, we have conducted quite a number of events over the last 1.5 years. So these are all various aspects of it. The one on the right would be the folks, the youth. that we are engaging as well from, say, SMU, from universities. We are empowering them also, so that when we do our CSR, say, if it is outside of Singapore, we can bring these people, and they can work with the CIOs, you know, to help those communities, those underprivileged people who have not had enough contact with technology, you know. So one of the things that CIOAcademy Asia does a lot is that we engage a lot of young people to work with us. Okay, so we have a good blend. You know, we have the most senior people, people like me with the grey hair, and then the younger folks. Okay, and we try very hard to make sure that we impart, you know, some of our experience and also coach them, and you know, hopefully over time they can be better leaders. Okay, I don't want to elaborate too much. I think along the way I have mentioned to you. In short, it's all about value, right? If you don't, you know, have a good, unique value proposition, then you know, you'll never be able to grow your brand, and you'll never be able to get more people to be interested in working with you, right? So in short, that's what it's all about. Okay, so my final slide, right? So people are asking me, right? So your last 1 year or so, what have you learned? You know, I was just sitting down and I was telling myself, okay, how do I put this all together in a manner in which, you know, when you walk out from this place, at least you can think of some of my insights, you know, my reflections. I call it poems, you know. Poems, you know, poems is basically something that has a lot of feelings, you know, something that you can share when you put it down. So this is what I come up with, right? So in the area of poems, each letter means something, right? So this in a nutshell is what I think has helped us, CIOAcademy Asia, to be where we are today. Okay. Firstly, all about partnerships and relationships, and I think if you're in the tech industry, don't ever think that you can do it on your own. You will need the ecosystem, right? You'll need the community. You'll need relationships with people whom you know, your partners, right? It's very important. Without which, I don't think you can accelerate your growth, right? It's basic, it's fundamental, okay? You need it, okay? No two ways about it, you know? And we have leverage on this in a big way, okay? And as I said earlier, both Glenn and myself, we've really spent a lot of time with our community. We have leverage on our past relationships, and we are building new relationships. Okay? And likewise, I think for you, if you're starting your own company, or if you're halfway there, or you know, maturing your company, this is the best way to accelerate your growth. Okay? Right? Leverage on other people and people who you know. Right? Overseas expansion, I think, again, you know, I don't need to probably be preaching to the converted here. I mean, you got to have a game plan. Our plan was very simple. We just wanted Southeast Asia first. Yeah, we have consciously left out China and India because I don't think we can, at this point in time, with the resources that we have, we may not be able to swallow it. So let's take it one step at a time. Let's just go places where it's close by, Southeast Asia, and I think we're beginning to gain some traction there. We'll see what happens next. Okay, so you must have a plan, right? And really, you know, experience, no doubt about it, it counts. I mean, people can say, yeah, you know, I like to have a company where only young people, because, you know, it's technology, it's new technical stuff, the older folks don't know about it, you know, they are, you know, people who, you might as well put them in a museum and all that. I don't buy that. Okay, I tell you this. Look, I was from the public sector, right? So now I'm in the private sector, right? I'm using all my experiences that I've gained over the last 3 decades in the public sector, and I'm applying it in CIOAcademy Asia. Now, what do I mean? Managing people. Okay? A lot of it comes through experience, right? It's never taught in books. Okay? How do you deal with different types of people? How do you motivate them? How do you get the best from them? How do you ensure that they work well as a team? A lot of it can come from people with experience, you know. But of course, I can understand that the millennials are a different breed altogether, and it may require a different style of managing, a different way of motivating them, but the basics are all still the same, right? They are people, and if you have sufficient experience and you know how to press the right buttons, you know how to motivate them in certain ways, it comes through experience, and if you don't have them in your company, get advisors, people who are experienced enough to help you, in whichever aspect of the company that requires experience. Okay, so experience really comes and it makes a difference, right? And look, I think you've heard this also many times. You're going to make mistakes, right? You're going to fail. You're going to. CIO Academy, we hired a few people. It didn't work out, right? We wanted to do certain programs. It didn't work out, right? But it's fine. We didn't allow that to hold us back, right? But what's important is learn from it, right? So we always say, look, we did this, it didn't work. We hired that guy, it didn't work. In our next hire, please try and avoid that, right? Try and avoid somebody with that profile, or try and avoid, making a hasty decision. Or we wanted to do that program, it didn't work. When we plan for our next program, let's think of something different, right? Because the last time we did that, it didn't work, right? So it will happen, right? But the good thing is that when you are a young company, it's easier to get over it, right? Of course, maybe if you come from a larger organization, the mistakes may be a little bit more painful, right? But like it or not, it's part and parcel of the process of growing. Yeah? So you cannot avoid it. I don't need to emphasize more social media. I already touched on it earlier. I mean, it's the best form of marketing tool and it's the cheapest in the market. Yeah? If you know how to use it well and you know how to use it correctly, it can make a difference, okay, in terms of the way you project your image to your community. Okay? And last thing is that this is something actually I think we do it but we don't realize it, sense and respond. Now what do I mean? Look, not all your plans will work. You have a plan, as you go along, you adapt it. If it doesn't, you cut corners or you tweak it a bit, right? But always adapt as you go along and respond accordingly. Okay? And we've been doing that. Okay? Some of the things that we are doing today, we didn't even realize that we could have done it a year ago. But it happened along the way. We learn through our engagements from our customers, we get feedback, and then we tweak, we adapt, and then we come up with a new offering or a new program. Okay? So I think when you're smaller, you're more nimble, you're more agile, better for you. Do that. Okay? Right? Don't take too long to adapt and change your programs. Sometimes people, what they say, analyze until you're paralyzed, right? Don't get into that trap. Okay? Sometimes quickly sense when you know something is not right, regroup, make a decision quickly. Don't dwell on it too long. Because if you don't make a decision, don't be decisive, it will hurt you. Okay? That's about it. And I hope that what I've had to say made sense to all of you, right? Like I said, I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I'm not a natural entrepreneur, right? My background is mostly in the private sector, but at least from the last year or so in CIOAcademy Asia, this is what I've learned. So thank you very much.
Can I make a couple of observations?
Sure, please.
And Bill, you have sort of only been involved in CIO Academy or participated
That's
in
right.
events.
Yeah. By the way, Bill is one of my advisors.
I think one of the main attraction, for CIO Academy is that you have the CIOs, their buyers community, rather than vendors.
That's right.
If you have vendors, they are less willing to share. Right? The IBMs and the digital or they would not want to share
Yeah.
some of their
Some of it restricted information.
So I think this is a
That's right.
natural audience to,
Yeah.
to
Right.
leverage on. The other one is that why is it attractive is, you know, a lot of the vendors they are willing to sponsor is because, you know, it's not easy to get to know the
Get access to
CIOs.
the CIOs. Yeah.
And the fact that if they just participate, right, even without, you know, presenting,
Yeah.
they get to know the CIO.
And they can build a relationship.
And later on they can,
Yeah.
you know, make use of that.
Absolutely right.
So that is really it.
Yeah.
And the third thing is this 100,000
Yeah.
names, right? CIOs at
Yeah.
C level.
Yeah.
I think that is a gold mine.
Yes.
And the question is, how
How do you harvest it?
harvest, but
Yeah.
without, you know,
Being in their face.
in the
Yeah.
face and being sort
Right.
of,
Yeah.
you know, too obvious.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
And I think the last point is that I noticed the reason why you're able to progress so quickly
Mm.
is really the, you know, Glenn and yourself.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to
Sure. Yeah.
praise you too much. Is the charismatic leadership, and also when you organize event, is to make it fun.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. The fun
Because
element must be there.
you know, CIOs don't want to go there and just, you know, day in, day out be loaded with, you know, lectures and all that.
Right.
So I call it edutainment.
Edutainment.
There is education, there's entertainment.
Yeah. That's
And
right.
the fact that you guys can find a venue and
Yeah.
have activities organized around it. And the venue of Bhutan,
Yeah.
as most of you know, is supposed to be the world's happiest nation. They go on gross national, gross GHI.
Gross national happiness, G&H. Yeah.
Gross happiness.
Gross
index.
that.
And most CIOs to find out why are people happy, what makes them happy.
Right.
So that's another
Full
you know,
right.
attraction of getting people there.
Right. Yeah.
So this is just a few points to add.
Question,
Right.
what does the CIO think of the startup community? Because
Okay.
I think being CIOs, they're
Sure.
going to be in a larger organization.
Right. Yeah.
The startups are usually at smaller and more nimble.
Yeah. Right.
Any
Actually, very good question because the whole perspective from a CIO's point of view towards startups, I think has changed. You know, if you had asked me, say 5 years or 5, 6 or more than 5 years ago, most of the CIOs will say, look, you know, don't bother me until you have a matured product or a matured service, then I'll start to look at what you have. Now, the situation has changed. Now, many of the CIOs know that they can innovate faster or they can learn with better ideas and better concepts from the startup community, and they must find a way to engage them. Okay, now what do I mean by find a way to engage them? CIOs also have difficulty trying to have a direct engagement with startups. Okay, because as I said earlier, especially in the technology space, sometimes they say there's a lot of noise. There's so many things happening there. They need to have somebody to help them create this engagement. You know, so I think probably ACE or maybe even SCS or SITF, or in fact even they're asking us now, CIOAcademy, hey, can you create platforms where you can pick, say 10 to 12 really good startups with good ideas, good, you know, technologies, good solutions, and then create an opportunity for the CIOs to come and engage them. Okay, so I think there's an opportunity there. It's how we can do it. How can we create that platform? Right? They are more open now. Yeah. Right.
Any other question?
Yeah.
So I have a quick question. You asked how CIOs can engage startups. Reverse way, how startups get involved in the CIOAcademy Asia ecosystem
Yeah.
to be part of how you are engaging CIOs.
Yeah.
Going through someone said going through the learning in.
Yeah. You.
Because I think the startups are still too small in many cases. I think there is value in engaging
Some, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Willingness to take risk exists today.
That's right. Yeah.
How does it?
So, yeah, go ahead.
Actually,
Chuck,
it's quite
go ahead, Chuck.
interesting because
Yeah.
I think you all have an answer, right?
Yeah,
I think maybe
yeah.
one of these days, either you share or invite the Unilever guys to come and share. Because
Yeah.
I know that Giri has working with Unilever
Yeah.
in this thing called a foundry, right? What foundry does is that they look at all types of ideas from all over the world in Unilever and outside Unilever, right?
Right.
And what the foundry does is that the foundry actually have these guys sparks off ideas, right? And they actually track the ideas,
Yeah.
out of which I think they have tracked 100 over ideas, 200 over ideas,
Yeah.
and then 45 of them actually became scaled into products, right? But Unilever is very different, right? Because they are a global, very large.
And they have a process, huh? They have a
They have a
process.
process, right? So maybe there's something.
They have done a different process
Yeah.
because the procurement process, is completely different from that.
Oh, it has to be. The procurement cycle has to be very different. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are thoughts, those are
Yeah.
thoughts.
Anyway, good question, because even in CIOAcademy Asia now, as I said Chuck earlier, that quite a number of the CIOs are also asking us to say, hey, how can we bridge the gap, so that we can get access to understand more about what the startups are offering. Now, a lot of people actually these days, they conduct like study trips where you go to Israel or you go to San Francisco or, in places like this, and inevitably they get to meet with startups, okay? Now, why don't you take that and invert it to just the Singapore market? I mean, likewise, CIOAcademy Asia or any other agency wanting to do this kind of business can actually play that role of filtering the best of the breed, right? And conduct tours, right? And bridge the gap. I mean, that's just one way. The other way is that now we are talking to the folks from Singapore Exhibition Services who do Community Asia every year. We said, look, besides just the usual big guys in the exhibition hall, why don't we create a space where we will do some research, some homework along functional lines, say under HR, under finance, or any other, like under marketing. We find the best of the breed startups for you, and we put them together. And then we invite the CIO community to come and engage them. I mean, these are just channels where you can create more opportunities for that meeting to take place.
I think that's, really the biggest challenge for startup. When you create something, how do you reach out to your potential
Yeah.
user? It's always the most difficult. And what, some of your investor or advisors do is connect you with people that they know. All right. So if they know some CIO in a particular industry which you want to service, so they connect. So if you wanted to do it a more formal way, is for you to participate in some forum. Right. So for example, Singapore SITN, right? They have a jumpstart program. So what they will do is bring all the startup, under the jumpstart, and then invite the SITN
That's right.
members, which are more also the buyers, but they are vendors, to actually come and engage these people. Right? Or maybe CIO
Yeah.
Academy, through CIO Academy, you can organize just a startup forum,
Yeah.
and then invite the
And then
CIOs.
invite, yeah.
So those are some
we
of the
create
ways that,
channels,
Channels,
for this to happen, the connection,
Correct, yeah.
based on relationships and all that. Yeah.
So you're riding on CIO -1 level, right? Which is very important.
Even -1. Yeah.
The way
Those people are very important because they are the ones who are actually doing the actual evaluation. Right?
and they are the visionaries.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
All right, hey, thanks a lot.
Oh, no problem.
Really
Thanks.
appreciate it.
Very enjoyable.
All right, we'll end the session today, right? But I think today I'm actually experimenting on organizations and different organizations that the startup can involve and should be involved with, right? Maybe looking down from this, right? I may invite the other organizations to also do a presentation like SITF, maybe even I'll do a presentation on what SCS is all about, right? Because I think other than just working with the technopreneurs itself, right? we should actually do a lot more externally and doing the networking, right? Pizza is here, right? So I thank you guys for coming again this weekend. This week, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you very much.